Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to another Red Pill Religion podcast. And, with me tonight, I have the Curious Scribe. Say hi, Curious.
Hello, everyone. I am the Curious Scribe. I am basically a native-born Catholic, and I'm also a writer. So I like writing fiction, and since with the name Curious, I like to, find out about different things. So I consider myself to be rather open-minded when discussing ideas.
Excellent. And everybody knows me, Jean Baptiste, um, the otter of the group. So tonight is I kind of the title is kind of anagamous, but during the whole you know over the past couple weeks, right? We other than the wall, which we're going to talk about tomorrow, and that whole debate, there was a debate on social media um, about white people calling the cops on black people, specifically because they're black, and then that which made me actually research how many people actually actually call the cops on each other to to influence their behaviors to get them to stop doing what they don't want them to do. Type of the busybody type people who usually are activists, and they get these type of laws, and not just laws but zoning codes and stuff like that changed in their favor. And there's a few instances of this, but it actually, as a group that actually believes in religious freedom and believes in a that having a living within a state is within a government, not within a state but within a government, or a several tiered government system like the US, like the US is. um there's negatives to it, but there's also positives. And the voting citizens like you and me actually has responsibilities. And I think that a big reason why our government is so corrupt, becoming so bloated with ideologies, why basically the evil people can manipulate it, is because pretty much the voting citizens are asleep. They vote for the party that their parents vote for, who their parents voted for, and so on and so forth. Um, my family has been Democrat since the foundation of this nation. That is something that my family actually has a claim to. I'm one of the first, like, within my generation. My cousins and myself, we all became conservative. One of my uncles is conservative as well, but that's only because of what has been going on politically. And like through the 90s, I think that and I was a kid, so I'm not too sure, but I think a lot of people were asleep. um they were asleep, but they weren't asleep at the same time. You understand what I'm saying? They didn't actually understand what was going on. And with the internet and the rise of the internet, Freedom of Information Act, which requires laws and stuff to be put online, one of the few really good things Bill Clinton did as a president, um, required the government to actually put every single law online. So we have at our fingertips, for the first time in American history, the voting citizens actually has a paperless way to read laws and actually see what are the actions our politicians are taking. And nobody's actually taking part. Nobody, you hear all these political discussions, but they're not actually talking about policies. And when they do talk about policies, they're just throwing talking points at each other. They're not throwing facts. They're not throwing this is what this law says, and this law, here's a link to a law, which is something that I generally try to do when I'm trying to argue specific laws. Is here's an example of law, section 503C or um, whatever section that I want people to read. That's where I'll direct them to. Um, and one of the things of the Freedom of Information Act, it also requires that legalese not actually be used. Everything is supposed to be defined within the bill, clearly defined within the bill, and everything has to be able to be read by the American people who do not have law degrees. It has to be read by people who do not have law degrees. Essentially, that is the law since Clinton, and it was good. It actually, as much as people like to bash on the Bush administration, Congress and the Senate, which are the main power of the U.S. government, actually was doing some pretty good stuff. Let's ignore the things that Bush administration pushed, that the Congress just signed without reading and without debating, which they learned from their mistake, and from Obama on, they decided to do heated debates, and stuff like that. I've been talking too long, so curious, Scribe, what is your takes on everything I just said, before we actually get to what we're supposed to be talking about?
Well, when it comes to laws and stuff, I feel like people need to understand that laws have to be able to be bent a little. Kind of like, a lot of people like use the analogy of like steel. If steel doesn't bend, it breaks. A law has to be bendable. Like you can't have a law that basically is unwavering, because there always needs to be kind of sometimes exceptions or, special cases, kind of like how murder is a crime. But of course, when it comes to self-defense, and you kill someone in self-defense, that doesn't define as murder. So we have kind of like, in a sense, tiers to make it so depending on the severity of said crime. So I personally feel like sometimes people read a law, they want it to basically be interpreted as the way they see fit when it's not supposed to be interpreted that way, if that makes sense to you.
Yes, laws are supposed to be written in very broad, very general terms. When you're writing a law, you're not supposed to do specifics, because when you're doing specifics, you're really just limiting, not just what the law can apply to, but protections that law provides, such as a stand your ground law. Let's say that two white people, but let's just remove race from the equation. Two people got in a fight, and one pulled out a knife and tried to stab him, and the other one had a gun, and the other one shot the guy with a knife. But under the stand your ground law, um, that is justifiable self-defense. It's justifiable self-defense even without stand your ground, but still, it's the whole idea. Um, and then you have things like business law, which is a little bit more flexible, like Kira Scribe was saying. It's some parts of business law is very flexible. There, like corporate tax code, and not just corporate tax code, but just small business tax code too, has a lot of, people would call them loopholes, but I call it sway. Has a lot more sway to allow for multiple different situations, because you want a law to be as adaptable as possible. So you want it to be as broad and general as possible. You don't want the definitions of things to be too broad and too general. You don't want the whole entire scope of the law to be too broad and too general. But as far as what the law does, what the law protects, what the law actually punishes, that these
Well,
things need to be, case by case. So it needs to
well,
be very variable. Oh, go ahead.
Well, oh, I was gonna say is like, well, the most important thing about for a law is that the law has to be understandable, because you'll notice that a lot of these like activist groups that you can find on both political sides of the spectrum, but especially on the left, is that they want very very loosely defined laws that are either very hard to understand or very easily to manipulate to their own benefit. Like take for example, the whole, if I regret, like if a woman regrets having intercourse with a man, she could basically cry if that was sexual assault. if the definition of sexual assault is put into such a loosely based term, then literally anyone, or specifically any man, could be accused of sexual assault if he has some form of sexual intercourse with a woman. So we want laws that are very easily understood and have defined meanings and requirements for that law to be broken. But we also don't want it to be super, super strict to the point where it can't like move a bit.
Also, laws have to be egalitarian. Now, I'm not talking about social egalitarianism, which
Yeah,
impossible, but legal egalitarianism, where the law itself, the written law, treats every single person that violates it or is protected under it the same. Because the law doesn't actually care. Your life experiences and stuff like that. It's like, here's something that can't really do. And if you don't think the government should be able to tell you that you can't really do this, it is within your right, according to the 10th Amendment, to actually push for a majority vote. Um, which is a long process and does not involve electronic petitions, but real physical petitions currently. Um, but there's a whole ordeal to it, which the activist organizations like took over way before the internet, way before we actually had the technology to look at some of the things. And then over the years, through different types of um, suing of cities, states, and whatnot, you have things that change. Like, if let's say a city in California had a church sign, and that was a big part of that city's history, because the city was originally built around a church. Um, and then atheist activism, activist organizations decide to sue that city because they can't actually have that. Well, that suing impacts laws, more specifically zoning codes, within certain areas, like historic areas. I believe was it was something. There's something about Christmas displays and historic zoning codes that make in some states make that ridiculous. But these things that are happening, even though they're not intending to have impact us, not openly. They're not saying that they want to impact our private residences, but these things do impact our private residences. And since I started out with a with talking about zoning, let's look at a let's look at our Pennsylvania story. Um, and these aren't really new. These aren't new. These aren't new stories. It's like this happened in 2018 in August. So it doesn't actually happen all that much, but I think that if more people have more than 10 people at their house, that uh oh, hey, are you there?
yeah,
Can you hear?
absolutely. You just stopped talking.
Oh, okay. My Hangouts is not responding, so I don't actually see what's going on, and my Google Chrome isn't really responding. So I apologize. Um, do you want to say anything about what I was talking about? while I'm waiting for this to happen?
Yeah, I guess on the subject of laws and stuff, it's like, see, the laws should, yeah, definitely be egalitarian in the sense of equality for the law. It's kind of like how, like Britain has a very biased definition of rape. Because according to at least in Britain, or at least it used to be defined this way, I'm not even sure if it's been changed or not. The definition of rape was basically like, um, what was it? I think of like a woman's like genitals being penetrated by male genitals and stuff, which is very gender biased compared to basically the a proper definition, which would be like any form of non-consensual sex.
Well, that's actually a new thing as far as U.S. law too, because that change was changed in 2013 when the not when the what the forcible penetration or something like that was forced penetration was actually legally recognized as a form of rape. Forced envelopment. I'm sorry, it's not. Yeah, that's what it is. Forced envelopment, which is basically when a woman rapes a man. Um, but up until 2013, the definition was, very much the males are the perpetrators, females are the victim.
Yeah, which was ridiculous because just defining it as non-consensual sex makes perfect sense because that also means people in same-sex relationships also can claim that they were also raped as well if they were sexually assaulted by a partner.
Right, and that's probably what it was. But I don't have any idea what my screen is doing or what Chrome or Google Hangouts is doing. Um, but um, the example of this is there was a couple in Pennsylvania. They've been served with cease and desist order for using their 32-acre farm for private prayer groups. Um, basically the farm was being improperly used as a place of worship, place of assembly, and as a commercial venue and special studio or school. They're charging $500 for each permit. Um, the farm, it has a yarn and wool shop and sells produce and flowers. Um, and they do classes and stuff for, I'm guessing, for extra money, but they're not. They were given a cease and desist order on actually on being used as a place of worship and a place of assembly, which kind of violates the First Amendment. Um, in my opinion, which is not actually my opinion, that's objective fact, that completely violates the First Amendment because that's their private property, and the reason that the county gave to the reason that the county gave, I think, went along the roads of this is a historic area, historic zoning, and they can't do whatever it is that they want to do if they have regular meetings. Then they can't do that, and they can't charge for whatever services they provide. And I think that has more to do with the zoning thing. But the thing that was really interesting to me is that they specifically said, the representative of that borough said that this family cannot actually host um, anything religious based on their property, like fundraising events and you know um, church elders, churches coming to do a meeting or whatever. Um, like they're seriously not only they're not only restricting what they can do as far as religion, but they're also accepting, they're also restricting you whether or not they can actually receive money from people, off of their land, that they own, they pay taxes on, and all that. So what do you think about that? Since we'll talk about this a little bit.
Well, I personally think that it's kind of weird because they own the land, right?
Right. They own land.
Well, if they own the
And
land, that therefore counts as private property, and on private property, they should be allowed to have people gather and pray if they want to. I mean, it's no different than people, I don't know, getting a bunch of people to have a party and like playing loud music.
right. And but if you have a gathering of 10 or more people though, because there's several more in different states, several more instances of this that just happened between 2010 and now. Um, if you have 10 or more people coming to your house regularly, and people inform your city about it, they can fine you. And it's not because there's a government, it's because people are nosy busybodies that want to, force others to, live. It's almost as if certain people, because I have a strong suspicion that the people who are actually reporting these people are atheists, specifically atheists that believe in the whole activism thing. um that it just because there's several instances on social media where you have atheists saying that religion should only be restricted to the individual and nobody else. Like there are atheists who claim that churches being allowed to be churches in public view is damaging and therefore shouldn't be allowed. It's not weird, but because it is something atheists do. They've been doing it since the 1700s, maybe. If you want to go, some people say that this is a stretch, but before the dark ages of the Greek civilization, the period that is called dark ages, because we have no idea what happened then, because all of the records, like the records from before and the records after, we know what happened. But in between a specific period of time within Greek history, historians have no idea. It's called it's actually the only dark age in history. When people call the dark ages, it didn't actually mean the same. Like it doesn't mean, like when we talk about the Greek dark ages, it's because there's nothing there. But just before the dark ages happened, there was an organization called atheism, um, that went against the state religions, essentially of Greece. And then you see that from Milo, the first atheist philosopher. And then suddenly the Dark Ages happened, because when I was researching Milo 3 years ago, um, it was very interesting to me that this figure, this atheist philosopher who was against the state pushed religion and religion in general, you know, made up these writings and basically, had a following. Suddenly, the Greek Dark Ages happened. So I have no, like you can't. And then after that happened, atheism isn't actually, repeated again in the Greek history. As far as from the historians I've read, I have not actually read the source material, because that's limited to professor type of people. But do you have anything to say about that?
My question is, who? Sorry, what is the name of this person? Milo what? Because I've never heard of this philosopher.
I can't do anything right now because for some reason Google Chrome is all frozen. Um,
Oh, do you have a lot of? Sorry, do you have a lot of windows open? Because
no,
you might.
I do not actually.
Okay, I don't know. You might maybe you could restart it or something. If like refreshing it.
Um, well, there is an Indian philosophy Um, 6th century BC.
Oh, do you want to try restarting your Chrome browser? Because pretty sure the Hangout should still keep going as long as one person's still connected.
All right, there we go. But now all right, so Pennsylvania couple. Um, what were you talking about?
Oh, I was just suggesting you restart your browser and stuff.
No, I
And
mean before that, because
oh,
I think I got
I
it
was just
figured.
wondering who the sorry, the full name of this philosopher Milo is because I can't find him on Google search.
Oh, this is let's see here. Uh, it's not that, and it's not Milo Croton. Uh, I know I saw you. Where did you go? Um, you. Well, that's not done. Atheos. Um, uh, Xenophanes, Anaxarus. Oh, that doesn't. That's different than it was 3 years ago. I'm looking at the actual Wikipedia article that said that. So that was what I read was probably either not true or the line of sources that I followed no longer exists. Um, I'm going to err on the side of caution and say that
Sorry, what was the books that you read that said this? What was the name of one of the books?
um
Yeah, where'd you learn this?
uh, was it Diagoras of Milos? I think it was, yeah, Diagoras of Milos. That's what I got. I messed up with that. His name wasn't actually Milo. It was Diagoras of Milos. He was banished. He was banished because he chopped up a wooden statue of Heracles and used it to roast his lentils and revealed the secrets of the Eleusinian mysteries. And they banished him for that. And then he died in Corinth. This happened in 5th century BC. And this is actually the first time, you know, an atheist appeared as far as philosophy goes. It was around 400 BC. But I am told that this is that kind of that is actually a stretch because we don't actually know a lot about his writings because they don't actually um it's a whole weird debate, but I was wrong. His name wasn't Milo, his name was Diagoras of Milos. um
Yeah.
I apologize. um what were you going to say though?
Oh, I really have anything to say, at least on this subject, since I hadn't heard about this philosopher before, so I currently voice an opinion on it.
Yeah. But since that was going on, but the borough is charging $500 for each permit if the couple wants to continue hosting activities at their farm, which I can kind of understand the need to for the commercial venue part, and special studio or school, but a place of worship and place of assembly should not require a permit, especially if that place of worship and place of assembly is within a private residence. Now, as I said before, but I couldn't actually scroll to it. Um, Samek, let me see if let me get who Samek is. Jeremy Samek, Senior Counsel for the Independence Law, which is their says he says that the couple cannot have Bible studies, church staff retreats, or or any church fundraisers at their farm. And the attorneys for the borough say Bible studies could be labeled as a class which needs a permit. The farm is located in what's been zoned a historical rural residential district. So this is the part that was the part that I think that atheist lobbying and atheist activism actually hurts us on the on the personal level, on what we do on our own property. Um, what would you agree, disagree, or what?
Well, I personally feel like if it's private property, then they should be allowed to basically have their Bible studies group. I don't see what the problem is because they're trying to use some detail about zoning.
Yeah, specifically historical rural residential area like that. That right there makes me think that something involving some kind of religious display, um, you know, like a state law, a Pennsylvania state law, or actually has something to do with this borough law, or county law. It's they very while atheist activism does target cities, you more hear about counties and states because counties and states can actually afford to fight them. Cities cannot. Um, and it's basically bullying through the legal system. But it's what these activism activist organizations do, and I'm not exactly convinced if there is no legal system, these types of people will not be would not be able to do something similar um, to other people because it's well, I don't actually agree with holding your own church in your own backyard. um it is most definitely within your constitutional
Well, they
right
didn't. Oh, well,
to
they didn't. Oh,
oh go
I was gonna say they didn't describe it as a church. It was basically a Bible studies group for prayer.
yeah, it was a Bible studies group and prayer. And their lawyer said that the city in which they live in also could not have Bible studies, church staff retreats, um, because it could be labeled as a class and would need a permit. But Bible studies, church staff retreats, so they can't allow churches, the staff of churches to actually camp on their property, for a weekend or something like that. So like a
What
bonding experience or whatever.
So how does it become legally defined as a class, though? I'm confused because, like, if people gather together to discuss things, I mean, by that logic, if I have a gaming meetup where people learn to play games, does that make it a class now? I mean, what? I don't. I'm confused. Where? Like, how does it become a class?
Well, like there's an actual argument. I can see why people would say, "Oh, it's just the state. You get rid of the state, and that's throwing out the baby with the bathwater." Um, it's more that the city, this particular city, because a borough, I believe, is a city, not a county. Um, at least in Pennsylvania, but the borough, so the city, um, probably wants a cut. They're probably assuming that they're doing the Bible studies group for profit, because they are doing other for profit type of things, which I don't actually agree with the city actually being able to tell these people what to do and what not to do. Um, I think that you know there are things within the Pennsylvania state constitution that would kind of make that illegal. Um, but there's loopholes to everything. The whole zoning thing is because they're zoned in a residential district, and over the years, the whole zoning um, things about zoning, what you can and cannot do within residential areas, has become stricter and stricter and stricter. One of the things that I noticed while I was researching this, and I came across quite a few libertarian um, people talking about this, but not this specifically. They're talking about lemonade stands, and then one video threw in a very short blurb of of a city keeping keeping religious gatherings down, and it's like no, that's there's some constitution that's completely unconstitutional. um but kids can't actually sell lemonade from their front yards anymore because of these zoning things. And it's just, I think it's more the activist types pushing and pushing and pushing. They're slowly creating a type of government, and a type of government that controls the society in a way that we don't actually notice. We don't pay attention to what these activist organizations do. We don't know the full extent of you know what laws feminism has and hasn't has not actually impacted. We don't know you know what some of the conditions of these of these cases that get settled out of court. Sometimes it's just cease and desist. Other times it's cease and desist and make sure that your laws make sure that this doesn't happen again, type of thing. And it's like the activist organizations are actually working like a mob, like not like a mob, but like the mafia type of mob, organized crime. um, which is why I'm against activist organizations. I think that they're the major reason why our government is so corrupt. That is, I think that is the ingress of all corruption. You get rid of the activist organizations, the lobbyists dry up because the lobbyists are paid by these organizations. So you suddenly have a whole bunch of people without jobs, but these jobs are destroying our country. essentially.
Well, these activist organizations are basically being run by people who have a very, very dangerous sense of morality because they don't believe in a like objective style morality. Their morality is very subjective and extremely biased.
Right, and but that seems to be people though, because any type of people that believe in an ideology, and I'm not saying ideology like it's a bad thing. Um, I think ideologies are good, and some of them are good, and they can be good. But when I'm saying ideology, I'm there is a ideology in religion has the not just capability, it attracts all types of people, including people with extreme types of thoughts and behaviors. It's not just related, these extreme types of people and behaviors aren't just limited to religions and ideology. They also, it also happens within, individual lives, because there are people that completely um, married to video games, for example, very fanatical about video games. Um, there are quite a few people like that. There are quite a few people, and that's relatively harmless to other people. Um, Whether or not that's harmless or not to an individual, that's debatable, depending on the circumstance. But you have all these instances of really extreme behavior. Some of it, all the extreme behavior that we actually see and experience are the really horrible kinds. But there's also more positive extremism. Um, the whole you know the whole thought that I'm trying to convey is there are a lot of people within that really far side of the spectrum, like really out there people. But we don't actually notice that they exist because they're usually reclusive. But you have these people that get onto these ideas and think that they're doing good when they're not. When they're doing more harm than good. Freedom from Religion Foundation, feminism, National Organization for Women has done quite a bit of damage to our legal system. Um, but they all think that they're doing good, but they don't. They're not.
Yeah.
It's the you know it, and there's other faces on this. There's a interesting case that happened in 2012 with a
Oh, is your
father.
before you continue, is your screen share working again?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, it's working, yeah.
Right. A father of 6 faces 60 days behind bars for hosting Bible study in his own home against city rules. This happened in what was this Salomon? So this was Phoenix. Yeah. In insisted that the issue has to do with public safety and not religion. Originally, what happened? He's been sentenced to 2 months in jail, 3 years probation, and more than $12,000 in fines for using his private home to host weekly Bible studies in violation of city's building codes. It came down to, and there's some things about this story that is kind of weird. Like this picture is supposedly the front of his house. Like you're free to put this type of signage and everything out on your property, but it just kind of looks like the type of thing you'd see in front of a church. And he had enough, like, I most definitely believe if this guy is telling the truth, who is an ordained priest, which if he's an ordained priest, then that means he'd be Catholic, which means this wouldn't be a church. But I doubt he's actually an ordained priest. I haven't actually looked up the. They're saying that it. He's saying that some of Solomon's neighbors complained about traffic congestion, and let's look at the. So it looks like he's in a development. Um, so he's having multiple people come, and his neighbors are like, all these cars are on the street, calling the city and stuff. This is it's just people, enforcing how other people can behave.
Well, that's actually pretty funny because okay, so I used to live in Connecticut, and where we lived was basically like 2 blocks down from the synagogue for the town and stuff. So basically, several times a year, like when there was a major Jewish holiday, our entire block would be lined with cars of people going to temple and stuff. And last I checked, I don't think people may have complained, but I don't think people took legal action against the synagogue for hosting these holidays and stuff.
Right, and the Salmons have been hosting Bible studies since 2005 for about 15 of their family, relatives and friends. This is what that house looking object, which um, looks like on the inside. They claim that they're no wait, is that the house or is that just a restaurant? That looks like a restaurant. Never mind. So this was probably taken in a public place, not on the residence. That's kind of dishonest journalism, in my opinion, because they're claiming that there's a
I think
pulpit
that's a
there.
group. I think that picture is just the group as a whole. They're probably
Yeah,
out to lunch. Yeah, I think that's
yeah,
what that photo is supposed to mean. Yeah.
yeah. But this is what the little shed thing that he built for, because at first, but what happened is he lives on 4.6 acre property, so he's probably in a development, and that development probably that's a pretty big piece of land. Um, I've lived on 5 acre property before, and technically res a subdevelopment, and it's still a lot of space. Um, but he's the owner of Mighty Mike's Burgers, and he is also an ordained priest with a master's degree in biblical studies from Western Theological Seminary. I I I'm really questioning whether or not he's a priest. Um, you know, because as you know, as being Catholic, a priest is different than a minister or a reverend. There's a much different and stricter codes of conduct for that. Not just codes of
Well,
conduct, but if this was actually a church and he was actually a priest, that it couldn't be labeled as a parish, and it can't really, and it's not a church. But I really doubt he's a priest. I think he's just a ordained minister.
that might. I mean, that could just be that the person who wrote the article just uses the term priest in like sorry in a general sense for Christians.
Yeah, I mean the writer could have a Catholic background, or was Catholic in his or herself. I don't actually look at. I don't even know if that's male or female. So I'm not even gonna try. So they, we'll just call this journalist they, because I don't really feel like seeing if this is all what their proper pronouns are. So officials said the city has become aware of the meetings is in 2007. Um, because the neighbors complained that there's just a lot of people, and then of course they call him pastor. So he's an ordained priest. Now he's a pastor. So this is I'm assuming this is somebody who is fairly ignorant of Christianity. Um, in my opinion, just from going from one to another interchangeably, like they are when they're not. Like a priest does something different than a pastor does.
Yeah,
It's vastly different.
yeah.
So
I
it's
think he's a pastor because this is Arizona, so I'm gonna assume
yeah,
that. since Arizona they're mainly made up of Protestants. So
Well, at first, what it was is he would have about 15 family members and friends. So he said, come to um come to him, come to his house and do Bible study once a week. Um, and neighbors complained, and so because it was happening in their living room for some reason. Um, so they're in their living room entertaining 15 people within their living room on their property, which the guy claimed that everybody parked on that. I'm kind of like, I have reservations about that sign. I can see why the city would claim this. He was trying to operate a house of worship out of his house, which again I'm not entirely against. It does not actually follow with the version of Christianity I practice. But at the same time, if you want to do it, and you have people that agree with you on that, um, you're leading them astray. You're leading them astray, but still, you guys are practicing your religion, and that's allowed to be done in the home. That's allowed to be done in the home with multiple people, with your family members, with your friends. You should be allowed to like have a Bible study at your house every week, and the host is able to talk almost like in a pastoral way. But of course I would have, like, with a group of friends like that, um passing it around type of thing, to kind of like circumvent this a little bit. But if it happens on my property, you know one week, and happens on another property another week, they can't really do anything about that. And some prayer groups actually do that because they don't want neighbors complaining on them. They've been doing that since the 90s, not because of zoning laws or anything else like that, but because there are people who can't mind their damn business.
well, I'm also curious. They're saying that he was given permit to convert a garage into a game room, not a church or anything else for that matter. So I'm now confused. Like, what, you need a permit to convert a garage into something, and like it's not a church. So I mean, how exactly is it immediately defined as a church if people are praying there?
Right. It's like, they're like, "Whoa, you guys are running a church in your home, and you can only run a church where we tell you to." I think that's a First Amendment violation. That's that's separation of church and state. You're telling, like, I don't agree with it, but if a person has the correct credentials and has a degree in stuff in theology, and wants to, for a very small amount of people, have a type of Christianity that I don't actually agree with, in their backyard, they're constitutionally allowed to do it. These regulation things, like I said, I think is because of atheist activism, um, and how they manipulate laws through suing people. This is essentially an example of the state of Arizona, um, you know, interfere. Like, if this was an actual church, if what he was doing was an actual church, it'd be the state of Arizona actually interfering with the church because they're not doing it the way they want them to do it. But at the same time, he says, "Well, this isn't a church. It's a bunch of people coming into my home, you know, and we're talking about Jesus and worshiping Jesus, which you are allowed to do." Um, and the another thing that happened in California, similar circumstances. As many as 50 people went to their home, twice a week. This is a Froms. This happened in 2014, 2011, and was last up. This story was last updated in 2014. So about a 3-year court battle. Or this story happened for 3 years, and I think I might be missing some things, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is actually under a paywall or if this is just a short um, story. But you know, instead, she said the city was fined the Froms for transforming a residential area into a place where people regularly assemble. So you're not allowed to have 50 friends. Like if these people with the father of six story, there's about 12 to 15 people. You're not allowed to have 12 or 15 people at your house regularly. Um, you know, you're not allowed to have regular events. And especially if you're talking about God and stuff. So, what if it was a bridge group, right? A bridge group who listened to gospel music and say praise the Lord whenever they got a good hand or something like that. And it was like 15 or 20 people. What would happen then? It's how far does this go? This is just, I think these are just, you know, examples of busybodies using the government and to get people to do what they want to do. And if there is no government, that doesn't mean that these busybodies will have no way to get people to act the way that they want them to. These type of people will find a way. These type of people wouldn't be these type of people if they didn't know how to get their way. But what do you have to say about all that?
Well, it is located in Orange County, California. It's kind of funny how they have time to do this, but they can't clean up all the trash that is surrounding Orange County. Because seriously, Orange County in lots of places looks like a third world country with how much garbage there's lying around in the state.
Yeah, and it's uh,
Like California's priorities are always screwed up. I'm not surprised that they're doing stuff like this and stuff. Their priorities are just completely just insane.
but I wanted to show the Pennsylvania, the Phoenix, and the just to show that it's not just all in California, because we all know California is screwed up. But
Yeah.
it's like there's the next thing we're going to see is we can't have strictly religious based cities. We can't have small towns that are built around a church and everybody goes to that church. There are some places in New Jersey where it's built around a synagogue and it's just Jews that live there. There are several small towns that are like that
So
throughout the country.
So did they define that these laws apply when you have basically regular visitors that exceed the over 10 or 15 people? Is that how the law's been defined?
In California, yes. The California aspect, yes. The thing with all of these cases is more than 10 people were reported, with the exception of Pennsylvania couple. Um, they didn't actually, this is the only story that did not actually disclose how many people were at the farm. So anything I said about that is beyond what the article says, is pure speculation. But California and the Phoenix were more than 10 people.
So how regularly would it have to be for it to basically apply? Is it like they're speaking like once a week, every month, or like what exactly would they define as regularly enough?
The Fromm case involves regular meetings on Sunday mornings and Thursday afternoons with up to 50 persons with impacts on the residential neighborhood, on street access and parking. Spokeswoman Kathy Salado said in an email to the LA Times. Um, so and their attorney says this is a semi-rural area, and they haven't actually this is a bogus charge. That's basically what their lawyer is saying. But pretty much it's because it's regular meetings on two days a week, Sunday and Thursdays, with up to 50 people. So you have 50 people come to your house, and you're worshiping God. You're a church now. Um, you know, but let's ignore that we actually do have families with, 8 kids still. Like there are families with 8 kids, all of whom are grown up by now, about my age. There's quite a few families that I know that had quite a few of my peers that had, a lot of brothers and sisters. And that was common also in my grandmother's time. But you have like these big families, 4 or 5, these families that, for 3 generations, each of them have maybe 4 or 5 people within the family. So, let's say that you had 2 sisters and 2 brothers, and, they're now at married age, and they're married with family and kids. So you can easily have, just with a close family, 50 people at things like Thanksgiving, at things like at things like Christmas. I've been to families' houses of Christmas dinners where you have aunts, uncles, and cousins, all sorts of people, like huge families. I've been around huge families, and it's like this type of thing is ridiculous, because it's like, what if these families, you know, don't really agree with any of the churches around them? Let's say that they live in a rural area within the Midwest with no Eastern Orthodox churches, for example. And one of them decides to make a little facsimile of a church in their garage, and the small number of Eastern Orthodoxes that live within that town decide to all gather there and worship. That's it is possible that group could, their First Amendment rights could be actually stepped on a little bit, because of the amount of people that are gathering. And it's ridiculous to me, because it's like, I have seen families with 50 people on the holidays. I have seen families that are close with 50 people coming and going, throughout the day on, properties that are about as big as what they're saying, 4.6 acres, semi-rural area, places where I actually grew up around. The farm is in a completely rural area in Pennsylvania. So it's like, these aren't even in cities. These aren't, places in cities. Like San Juan Casperino in Orange County. What do you know about that city? Is it big? Is it small?
I actually don't really know anything about the city. Yeah, outside. I mean, I've only ever been to LA and San Diego before, and I've been to the airport in San Francisco, but I'm not too familiar with all the other cities in California. I mean, all I just know is people have been talking about Orange County because people have been posting photos all over the internet with all the garbage in the county that's been littering the environment.
All right, so it's looks like a small town. Um, yeah,
Not
it looks
surprising, Orange County is made up of mostly small towns. I don't think there's any big cities there.
yeah, it looks like a small town there. With golf club right there, so there's probably a retirement aspect to it. Um, yeah, there's historic district, so it's a fairly old city. It's probably just an old small town. Um, that wants to, that feels pressure on a political level to keep certain zoning things, because there's some states like California very much has this problem where the politicians are all from the big cities, and all have big city thinking, and all think the entire state, even though the majority of the population density, yes, but essentially the minority of the landmass um, can fully control an entire state, and that's what is happening in California. All these zoning regulations and stuff like that. Sometimes it comes from um, San Diego. No, not San Diego. Sacramento, the state's capital. I believe it is, right? Are you still there?
Yeah, absolutely are. Yeah, again, I'm just not too familiar with yeah, the like at least when it comes to the capitals in California.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I think it's Sacramento though.
Okay, yeah, I just sorry, yeah, I just pretty much am familiar with all of the political like garbage that's been coming out of the state.
Yeah, and that's mostly coming out of San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego to a point. But it's mainly from what I've been seeing and from what conservatives that mostly live in this area
Yeah, so from what I
are
hear is
saying.
sorry, from what I've heard is that those states' policies are basically essentially only taking into account of like the very rich cities like LA and San Francisco and even San Diego, despite the fact that they're disastrous for the non-big city parts of California, which is why there was a push for the whole concept of New California, where people wanted California broken off into at least two parts or maybe in three parts, where basically you'd have California that was made up of San Francisco, San Diego, and LA be one part of California. New California is like the interior, like non-big city part of California being its own state.
Well, I mean, this is like California. How California is now is definitely a good reason for there to be an electoral college, not just for the presidential elections, but for the entire government system.
Yeah, I'm
You know,
I'm personally in support of actually California breaking up into pieces because I personally feel like yeah, with how the state has been falling apart, I think it would be best if there is a separation because there are lots of people who don't feel like their voices are being heard because of how overpopulated the cities are in the state, who are basically determining what politics are being pushed for in the state of California essentially.
I mean, my opinion on this doesn't matter because I do not live in California, um, and I'm going to say that because as far as my opinions about how people that live within a state should live is really irrelevant. It's kind of like me talking about European politics, um, but it's you
Well, they're
know
still part of the United States of America, and again,
well,
California's politics is going to have some effect on us because we're paying their debt. So this is affecting us because we're paying their debt with our taxes.
yeah, that is true. That is true. I mean, but with the whole like, yeah, I not sure that separating it would be an effective thing. I think more of an electoral college system would be a little bit more effective. Um,
But that's in the sense of sorry presidential elections where
well,
this would
no,
have an effect on state politics.
not just presidential. Seriously think that the electoral college should more be not just for the president, but for all forms of government. Because you're seeing with the whole immigration thing, um, these Democrats, like there are Democrats in Texas that sent illegal immigrants. You can vote, basically cards with everything filled out already. With the check, yes, I'm a legal U.S. citizen box checked, and some of these people, and the only thing that was blank on there was party affiliation. And it was a really interesting thing because the in Texas, the news article that I read, actually said a lot more of these people were Republicans than a lot more of these people that got these cards ended up registering as Republican voters and voted for the Republican candidate. It was an example of it was like a local Fox style of conservative news that pointed this out in Texas, and it was like, yeah, this happened, and it completely backfired on the Democrats. But again, you have these things happening where they're just saying, come in, come in. San Diego is a sanctuary city. Los Angeles is a sanctuary city. So on and so forth. We're come to the cities. Don't come to the country, but come to the cities. So they're all flocking to the cities because cities are saying free things. These are the things we believe in, and it sounds nice to gullible people who don't aren't
Well,
educated and don't actually
the reality
understand things.
the reality is that the economy in California is basically collapsing because all of these ridiculous regulations are shooting up prices for all these, like, especially for like housing. Like housing has a huge amount of like loops, like hoops that you have to go through, which is why part of the reason why housing is so expensive in the state. Like basically, it's just there's just so many ridiculous regulations that almost sometimes make no sense that it's literally almost impossible to live in California without charging a huge amount of bucks and stuff.
Well, my personal theory about California is they're trying to push all the poor people out, so that way California becomes only populated by the rich.
And then
Um,
that makes no sense because economically, that's suicide. Because again, having all rich, who's going? You need to have a working class population. Otherwise, you're essentially your economy is just going to become flatline, and then literally no one's going to make money.
that's the beauty of illegal immigration. You don't have to pay them if they call OSHA. They're more than if they call OSHA or the government because you are mistreating them. More than likely, they're not going to report it because if they do, they get deported. So
Yeah, but
they have like the Democrats have a plan in California. It seems
the
to use illegal immigrants in that way, in making it harder and harder for legal Americans to actually live in California. Because I have some friends in California, and they have in rural areas and stuff. Is like, yeah, this I knew a guy who had a farm and his family for multiple generations, and you know the state did some chicanery, and now it's not owned by him, and and they basically took his weed crop. They took after they actually legalized marijuana and everything, and they gave it to a company. It's I think from my actual talkings with various individuals from California, both from there and that live there currently. I like I'm not surprised that a lot of them are anarchists. A lot of the people that I talk to from California um, go along that the government is evil type of mentality, because what they're actually describing is, I would argue, not exactly constitutional. However, the states don't have to actually operate. They have to operate under a state constitution, but the federal constitution is just broad general guidelines. um, it's not really a huge expansive voluminous text. It's short and sweet and to the point. And all the little holes in it, that was designed so the states had more freedom and self-governance. It's a problem with that, with the idea of the states should it's kind of a problem that with the thought that the states can do no wrong, um and the federal government shouldn't have so much power. They shouldn't, but at the same time, it's and I don't think it's because of government. I don't think it's because of, I think it's ideology.
See, I personally feel like so. Okay, I think the reason like, California is the way it is because you basically have the populations of the big cities dictating what the state does. Like you have a really corrupt and really incompetent state governor who's basically doing whatever and stuff to basically appease a bunch of social justice warriors. So the state is basically suffering due to the fact that they have this extremely like this extremely almost authoritative pandering system that they enacted in the state as a whole.
Yeah, the as far as this particular thing, and there's only 30 less than 35,000 people in this city. Um, and the California couple fined $300 for holding home Bible study city. You know, less than 35. That's not a lot of people. That's a very small amount of people, especially with where it is. Um, you know, which could be part of Los Angeles's urban sprawl. Um, it's in between Los Angeles and San Bernardino. Um, you know, so it's in that right area. You know, but it's 35,000 people is not a lot of air. That's semi-rural, most definitely. And
Yeah, I just personally think that the new California solution would basically, I think, give a lot of people who feel disenfranchised, like feel like they have a voice in state politics, and everything's not dictated by the elites in the cities.
right, and you know, but I don't think splitting up like there are issues with splitting up California. You know, constitutional issues and
Yeah, I feel like
like there if that was like Virginia and West Virginia had a very legitimate reason for splitting up. Um, it's at this point, well, yes, it looks like it would be a very plausible thing. It's still it's still iffy to me. Like if the people that live in California from California is all for it, then you know that's fine. But I think there's other options like a state based electoral college. But then again,
I
that
don't think one
can
thing is they wouldn't
still
allow.
be
Yeah, I don't think they. I don't think that would. Yeah, if you're going to try a state-based electoral college, I think people would really strike that down. I feel like more people would more willingly support the whole breaking it off. I feel like the only people who would hate that would potentially be the Democrats because that would basically that would be a huge realignment in the electoral college. So I think if anything, the Democrats would hate that, which is why I think
well.
it's a great idea.
Well, yeah, the Democrats actually hate the Electoral College, period, because they think that the cities should be controlling the rural areas, that the rural areas are stupid and don't know what's good for them.
Yeah.
I seriously think that there's some people in the cities that, you know, would rather the entire country be a giant city. And it's frustrating and you know boggling my mind why people would want to live in big cities in the first place.
I
Um,
mean, I've lived in a big city. I mean, people, a lot of these people who want to live in big cities basically are there because they think it fulfills their idea of diversity, and to them, it's like a theme park, basically. You know, like it's a wild ride. Everything is big and all that stuff, and they basically like hate their small town backgrounds. You know, because I've lived in both a town and a big city, and yeah, that's basically the mentality you're getting from these people is that they think it's like diversity and stuff where like they can express themselves liberally. So a lot of these people are moving to these big cities basically for lifestyle. They don't really they don't care about jobs. They don't really care about opportunity. All they care about is just to fulfill their really their really warped lifestyle in a way.
so basically, they want to be selfish.
Yeah,
Um,
that's basically what it is. It's literally just wish fulfillment. It's like that kid who wants to go to the amusement park to see the magic or whatever. It's like going to Disneyland.
yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I think that the American voter is pretty much asleep. They're asleep at the wheel because it's like these people vote. These people who go to these big cities for for their dream and self gratification, they're most likely to vote.
Yeah, that's
They're the ones that the Democrats actually pander to. The Democrats aren't pandering to the people that are actually working and keeping even on the left. The people that are actually working and trying to stay traditional, even if you're on the left and you try to stay traditional, more than likely you're going to be ostracized.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm actually kind of personally supporting like sorry what's the word sorry like kind of like a restrictions when it comes to voting. Like I'm kind of in support right now of the idea of only net taxpayers being able to vote, because I personally feel like giving everyone the vote was in fact a mistake, and the founding fathers never intended that originally.
Well, you're right, but it's
Because now you have people gaming the system. Because now it's since everyone has the vote, you now have people trying to game the system, which is why you're seeing all these accusations of voter fraud running rampant nowadays.
well, even without universal suffrage, people would still try to be gaming the system.
Well,
That's
yeah, just now it's even easier. Like it's much easier now.
well, yeah, but I mean, I'm more in favor of if you're a woman and don't want to be, sign up for the draft, you don't get to vote. I think that only people who sign up for the draft should be allowed to vote. I also think that, you need to sign up for the draft to be able to get federal loans, house loans and stuff like that,
See,
and federal assistance. If you do not, then that means you are opting out of federal assistance
well,
and,
see,
and
here's
federal protection as well.
Well, see, see how I reason my stances on this is that so like I'm going to quote Sargon for example, because Sargon mentioned this in one of his videos. I can't remember which one it was, but it was about how people will vote in their own self interest. You will very rarely find someone who will vote against their own self interest, unless they're normally brainwashed beyond belief to do that. Most people will vote in their self interest. So because people vote in their own self interest, if you're someone who's homeless, extremely poor, then they're going to vote for whatever system is going to basically going to fulfill what they want or need and stuff. Which is why when you give everyone the vote, people are going to vote selfishly. That's how people act, which is
Well,
why I personally believe not everyone should vote.
yeah, but people aren't actually voting for their actual self-interest. They're voting
Well,
on,
I mean,
they're
people
voting, they're
poor
not.
people vote socialist, yeah, are voting for Bernie Sanders are doing that because they want the free stuff. They think that basically the rich are out to get them and that they need to, basically redistribute the wealth. That's why you have so many of these basically openly socialist politicians.
Right, but at the same time, these people don't know what they want. They don't know what these policies are. They don't know what it says.
Well,
They
they
don't
just
do
want
the research. They're lazy. They only accept
okay.
what these people on their TVs, what these politicians claim that they're going to do, and they almost never do. Like President Trump is the first president that, fulfilled a majority of his campaign promises.
Well, the thing is that say they know what they want. They just don't understand how unrealistic or how dangerous the consequences of wanting that stuff is. Like they want free stuff. They want free housing. They want free healthcare. They want free. They constantly say what they want. They just don't care of the consequences. So, just in my personal opinion, yeah, if people who basically are net taxpayers who basically make money have some form of wealth, not all rich, but basically you're middle class essentially, where you're basically paying your fair share in taxes, then I feel like you definitely should have the right to vote, because then you're actually contributing to the economy and they're not being a detriment to it. Like,
Right.
and also if you're a veteran, like if you served in the military, you should have the right to vote. And if you're not in the military, then you should basically be contributing to the economy, where you're not basically being detrimental, where you're just sucking money out of it. Then that's also when you have the
But
right to vote.
even then, even under those strictures, you don't have any way of ensuring that these people just won't be lazy. Which is voting
Well,
for
if you're
the part only for the party that they chose, which is the party of their grandparents and whatnot. They're only voting for that party because of that. They don't actually know. They know what these guys are saying, but they don't know what they're doing. Like,
looking at the numbers,
a
people
majority of people, like conservatives and liberals, and progressives, have no idea what the laws say. Like when you're on the internet and you're trying to debate with somebody about specific policies and specific laws, if you present, here is the law, here is the section of the law right here, you will not get any type of response on that. Nobody will actually engage you on that. But if you like throw out talking point after talking point, then they'll engage with you because, they'll just engage with you with other talking points. But it's like political discourse in this country is horrible. It's horrifying because it's just, two groups of people throwing talking points that, they saw on TV without actually knowing anything. Like there's people that support the new Green Deal, and it's a horrible idea. It's a horrible deal. Um it's just it's just it's just bad. Um it's it's worse than, Eisenhower's New Deal. um but it's like there are people
You
that,
mean yes? You're talking about FDR, not Eisenhower.
oh, I'm sorry, FDR, yeah. But there are people that support policies and support ideas that they have no idea what it is.
Okay.
They just know the taglines. They
Well,
just know the talking points.
okay, I'm just saying, looking at the numbers, because I'm going off of data and stuff from like voting, from like, sorry, from voting trends and stuff. People who basically who make money, who are contributing to the economy, like they're paying their fair share in taxes, by working good jobs, working hard, they on average tend to either be more conservative or at least more centrist compared to being very far progressive. I think like outside of like, tech businesses, tech jobs and stuff, most working class people who are paying their fair share in taxes are definitely more on the centrist to conservative side. Whereas I think a good chunk of the Democratic voting base come either from people who are very low class or, are basically from the very progressive cities.
Well, there's that too, but I mean, I don't actually think outside of presidential elections, even if you restricted the right to vote to these people with that pay into the economy and stuff, um, I don't think that they're actually going to do their responsibility. I don't, which is to read the laws and policies, to know what the politicians are about, not just what they say they're about, but through their actions. And if they don't have previous political um actions, then somewhere they have a written down policy of what they want to achieve. Um, what they want to achieve in policy, and you can kind of get an idea on whether or not, this person can represent you, whether or not this person has the ability to represent you, even if that person does not share the same views as you.
Okay. It's
Which is very important because nobody should actually vote partisan
okay.
because
It's
they're you
it's
know
not a sorry, I'm just gonna say this. It's not a foolproof plan, but I do feel like it's a much better solution compared to basically having a random person from whatever third world country or whatever country who basically can barely speak English, who doesn't understand our laws, tradition, and the Constitution, who will basically vote for whoever's going to give them what they want. I feel like that is far more dangerous to our democratic system compared to people who basically, you have to pay your fair share in taxes to be allowed to vote.
right. But even like, all right, um there's a huge disparity between frequent voters and non-voters.
Yeah.
There are more non-voters than frequent voters.
Well, that's because
So,
a lot of people don't believe in a lot of people just don't vote because they don't think it will do anything. Like if you ask most people who don't vote, they just don't think it does anything really,
right, and
especially young people.
I think they're kind of stupid for thinking that.
Well,
Because
yeah, no, my mom would agree with you.
I mean, because it our voting system isn't like Venezuela's voting system. It's not necessarily rigged. Um, it kind of is a little bit, and that deals with the Federal Elections Committee, which is not a government controlled. It is a private entity. It is not a government controlled thing, but it is run primarily by people who are aligned with Democrats and people who are aligned with Republicans. They have been impacting laws. These non-elected officials who oversee our elections, who actually control our elections, you know we have no ability to um interacted with them as voters. We have no ability to, say what you're doing is wrong. Like, they're actually keeping the third parties out of televised debates after Ross Perot almost won against Clinton. That was the last time a third party candidate actually was on the main stage and debated between the Democrats and the Republicans, and that the Federal Elections Commission did that on purpose. So another Ross Perot wouldn't happen, because Ross Perot almost beat Clinton. Ross Perot almost became our first non-Democrat and non-Republican, president. Very
Well,
close.
funny enough. Even though Trump is technically ran as a Republican, he's definitely not really a member of the party. Like multiple Republicans say he's an outsider, which is why some of them don't like him and stuff. Because he is a Republican president, but he's essentially an independent president. Like you could basically call him independent.
Right, but he didn't want to run independent again because he saw that the game was rigged. If you're a third party, the game is rigged.
Well, one of the reasons why if anything, one of the reasons why I definitely I liked Trump's presidency was the fact that we needed to have a non-politician president. Like, despite the fact that according to the rules, you don't have to be a politician to run for president. You just have to pay a certain amount of money, and then you can start a campaign and stuff. The fact that for basically since the founding of the nation, almost basically every president has been a politician. It's kind of disheartening the fact that only politicians can ever be presidents. It kind of makes it feel like it's almost, in a sense, a very weird style royal family where you have to be basically within the family, which is a politician family, to basically become president.
Well, yeah, but that's. I think that's more because of human being. Again, I think it goes more back to a lot of people are, I do say that they're lazy, but it's a little bit more than that. It's a little bit simplifying a complex problem.
But you do know that there's a lot of hand rubbing, though, right? Because like when only
Yeah,
politicians can be presidents, that's a lot of hand rubbing that goes along within these parties, and that includes both Democrats and Republicans.
right, but that's not always true though, because Ronald Reagan was not actually a politician.
Well, he's an actor, and politicians, actors are almost essentially the same thing. It's just actors are beloved, while politicians are universally hated normally.
Right, and mostly politicians have been generally lawyers, because who else should
Yeah, because lawyers are supposed
it's
to.
like, well, what other type of profession is job is essentially to read laws and make decisions based on them. So to a lot of people, I think it just made more sense if you're a lawyer, if you're not a lawyer and you're not a CEO, if you're like an average Joe, like if Trump wasn't a billionaire and he wasn't the CEO of a company, no matter how many times he failed, if he wasn't a billionaire and he wasn't a CEO, and in the limelight, if he was just some schmuck who owned a small business, he wouldn't be elected. He would not have been elected if he was just some New York schmuck with a plumbing business who had good ideas. But because people won't vote for that. That's not what people want. People think CEO means driven, means successful, means this is the type of person that I want to lead our country, type of thing. That's kind of how people vote, though. It's not on whether or not this person is the right person for the job, but whether or not this person has the professional accolades that
Sorry, did I
they.
disappear for a quick moment because my computer
Oh,
shut off?
oh yeah, you did for a little bit. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I was just
No,
clarifying. Yeah,
I'm saying that if Trump was not a CEO or a public figure, a very rich public figure, that everybody in the country knew, he would not have become president. Hillary would have won. If he was just some schmuck, from New York who was a plumber, he would not have won, even if he had a lot, of better ideas than Hillary and did the same exact things he did, against Hillary. He, him being a CEO and him being a billionaire, I think, gave him a lot, made people, pay attention to him a little bit more than if he was just, Joe the plumber.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, that's true and stuff. That's basically like Trump is basically kind of like it's something you could say it's a compromise. Like people wanted an outsider and basically wanted a non-politician president, but you would have to have someone with money to do it, someone who had a name. So basically, in a sense, he's kind of like a compromise because you weren't going to get basically an average Joe as president. That was basically impossible.
Well, right, but we're also seeing that allowing the average Joe in to Congress is kind of dangerous, as we see with the
Cortez.
Cortez, who is a economics major who
Oh God.
doesn't seem to have actually worked a real job in her
What's
life.
yeah, but first of all, where did she go to college? Because economics major, depending on what the college is, I'm
I,
very
I
skeptical.
I think it's Columbia. I think in her dancing video, she's actually wearing um I think in her dancing video, like if she wasn't so crazy, I would say she's cute. Boston University, it looks like.
Boston University.
Yeah, I would argue that due to the people in this video and what what they're wearing, that she went to Boston University. If I was to actually look up Alexandra, let's see here.
Yeah, let's look up her college. Yeah.
But I would actually, I would actually argue that she went to school in Boston. We'll say Wikipedia. It's not really all that all that
Yeah, it's Boston University.
yeah, Boston University. She has her education is a bachelor's degree, so she doesn't have a master's degree or or a PhD.
And
And
what's the degree in?
um, I think it's economics. Um, see
Well,
here.
if you go down, it should probably say her
Um,
education. Yeah.
really like was born in Bronx. Um, her dad was a
Let's see.
architect. That doesn't mean that he was a successful architect, but he was an architect, which is hard to get into in New York. From it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to actually become a.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything really. It just says stuff she did, and this is strange.
Yeah,
It's not saying what her bachelor's degree is in. It just says during college she was an intern in the immigration office of U.S. Senator Ted Kennedy, of
uh,
course.
she graduated cum laude from Boston University's College
Colleges of
of
Arts and
Arts and
Science.
Science,
Oh
which
dear.
a bachelor's degree in international relations and
And you can
economics.
okay, that screams globalism right there. I'm getting serious
Well,
globalism vibes.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if you actually look at her policies, that's. I mean, if she wasn't so crazy, she'd actually be kind of cute.
Yeah, but that doesn't equal you should be in like dictating our laws in the nation.
Oh no! I get that. That's
The
why I
crazy
say
ones look great.
that's why I say she's if she wasn't so crazy, I would say she's cute. But
I'm just saying, yeah, the crazy
yeah,
ones tend to look cute.
yeah, but it's again it's like a lot of her policies is weird. Like I would actually suggest people to go to a nice little website that only exists because of the Freedom of Information Act. The Freedom of Information Act is more than a form that you fill out to get the FBI or CIA to answer your questions. It is the law that requires all laws to be on the internet. And the only way for us to actually look at what Congress does, the House of Representatives and the Senate, is from a thing called House.gov and House.gov, Senate.gov, Congress.gov, which used to be the Library of Congress, the Thomas.lc.gov. It's now Congress.gov. And this is where you see all the federal laws. You show everybody what it looks like. This is also where you can get live streams of the House of Representatives and the Senate without having a little CNBC logo or mainstream media logo. Like, this is the feed that the mainstream media actually uses. It's available. It's available to all the people, and as well as being able to read what is actually being discussed. Like this bill that I randomly clicked on. And I seriously suggest people go to congress.gov for all of their actual political news as far as what Congress is doing, because the mainstream media doesn't tell us the things. They only show us sound bites, like C-SPAN and stuff like that. They show us they kind of show us the entire thing, but they cut for commercial breaks. So we'll be seeing, it's not completely, it's kind of delayed by a few minutes. And the live streams that have been happening since the late 90s have this. But the Bureau of Indian Affairs and Bureau of Indian Education, what? No, they're their own countries. You have no right to have that bureau. Anyway, this is what this bill, Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies Appropriation Act of 2019. The Indian Health Service. So basically, they're trying to make reservations part of the American government now. It's weird.
Wait, they're trying to make Indian reservations part of the American government.
Well,
wait a minute.
This bill is talking about giving money to the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, National Park Services, U.S. Geological Survey, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement, and Bureau of Indian Affairs and Bureau of Indian Education.
So wait, when was? Oh, was that?
This is actually a introduced today, 1/08/2019. It is a bill summary for HR 2266, which was actually debated on or talked about during the last actual time that the House of Representatives was in college, was in session. And appropriations, I'm fairly certain that's federal government speak for money. I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But this bill provides appropriations to Interior. So basically,
apparently,
to actually pay people.
So the Bureau of Indian Affairs is basically helps manage the whole all the acres of land that are given to Native Americans throughout the United States, including Alaska, for the tribes. So apparently it handles basically, I guess, probably the legality and land rules when it comes to reservations. I wonder what extra money they want from there, because they're asking for more money, right?
No, they're I think that they're talking about with the government shutdown actually paying these bureaus, part of the Interior, which the Department of Interior oversees all these people. The Interior two departmental offices include Office of Secretary and Office of Solicitor. So basically, so all these people who have been working during the shutdown can get paid. That's what I think that's what I think it says, because it says it provides appropriations. Appropriations usually deals with money. I think this is regarding the government shutdown, but I'm not sure. I didn't actually look at it. It was something that was on the floor, and I just like clicked on it. But these are what the House of Representatives last talked about. And Senate Bill 1, Strengthening American Security in the Middle East Act, created by Marco Rubio. This was the only thing actually talked about in the Senate on January 3rd. Oh, wait, no. The last time on the floor today, so January 11th, 2019, last time Senate was in session, they only talked about one bill. And the House of Representatives, January 11th, 2019, last meeting, only talked about three bills. So a lot of what they've been talking about, if you actually look at live streams, is and January 11th, both of them were on January 11th. And you look on the live streams, you actually see, and it's boring. It's really boring to watch the government actually work. But it's you see this bickering that you don't actually see on C-SPAN. But there's like this bickering that's been going on the Senate floor between Schumer and Maryland, something that happened recently, and it got out on YouTube. But and it had the C-SPAN watermark on it. It's like, dude, you could have just taken this off the internet. The government allows you to download it for free. But anyway,
Well, yeah, it's just when it comes to the government, there's a lot of complex things, and yes, I do agree that people on both sides of the political spectrum may not understand all the full intricacies of the government. But I guess back on the subject of like voting and stuff, I just personally feel like is that the founding fathers didn't intend for us to be a democracy and didn't intend for universal suffrage. So I feel like us going away from that, I think, is one of the biggest reasons why we're in this situation with all these like very piss poor voting decisions, as well as all
well,
these ridiculous like laws being enacted.
well, yeah. I mean, there's when universal suffrage happened. Also something that happened that disappeared was actual political discourse. You look at the writings and the 17th and 18th century, where voters would just be writing essays on why the other side is wrong, and putting it in the newspaper, and it would all be landowners, and this argument swayed some people, another argument swayed another people. It's technically how the public sphere should work through debate. We everybody who votes should be able to, within the public sphere, come to a compromise on who should be voted for and who shouldn't be, and whether or not these people that were voted on actually represents the will of the people. There's a great responsibility with the right of voting that is wasted because a lot of people don't believe it. It's because of universal suffrage. A lot of people don't believe it actually does anything. They don't. You had you had and you have with Bush. The Bush presidency. If the Bush election and stuff.
Which one?
The first one. The Florida recount one with Al Gore.
So, you mean the son, not the first Bush?
Yeah, the son, the controversial election in 2001's election, I think, or 2000's election.
Yeah. Because like what they recounted, everyone thought that like what they stole the election from Al Gore.
Well, that's when Democrats really started to be like the Electoral College should be abolished. That's when that narrative actually appeared. I remember
Yeah,
that.
I heard people talking about that. I mean, given out of all, like with Al Gore and his crazy climate change like hysteria, I mean, him being president, would that really be a good thing?
I mean, instead of Bush, we would have had a Macron before, Macron was a thing. I mean, we would more than likely, instead of going to Iraq, Al Gore would have been dealing with his own Yellow Vest riots way before the Yellow Vest riots
Oh,
happened.
you're talking about Macron?
Yeah, yeah, no, no.
Okay.
Very much. I think Al Gore would have been, would have made policies like Macron, which would have,
See, I
because I'm not actually convinced that climate change caused by human pollution is real. I think that there's
yeah,
like
my
there's bigger influences on
my
our
view.
climate than just what humans do.
Well, my view on the subject is okay. Like, is the climate changing? Yes, the climate is definitely changing. Can humans have an impact on the climate? Yes, we can. The question is it really as serious as these climate change hysterics are? Like me personally, I feel like pollution is a more bigger problem in my opinion than climate change. Basically, water being polluted by chemicals or people not cleaning up after themselves and like resources and stuff like that. That's more of a pressing issue. And it's like such as famines and diseases and all that stuff. That's more, and as well as contamination from like radiation, like that. That's more of a pressing issue than climate change. I just feel like this whole climate change hysteria and calling people science deniers for not believing in all of the hype, as you would call it, and stuff. I just feel like that's just to me that's just partisan politics in play to
Oh,
try and demonize people.
it's not even that. It goes much deeper than that. Within the climate sciences, anybody who actually shows scientific evidence that these models, because the climate change science is based on models, not on actual data, that these models are incorrect. Like their whole entire assumption is that carbon dioxide, the food for trees and other types of plants,
Yeah,
you know, it is causing was the cause of the Earth you know heating at a when I say extremely high rate, that it's not like it's not what you think. It's like 1 or 2 degrees a year or something like that. It, it,
yeah.
it, it it's it, it's a big impact, but it's not like it's the whole idea of greenhouse gases, of global warming, which is what you know is what changed into climate change. The whole entire argument, that whole entire discussion was 100% humans are causing this. And now they morphed it in global warming into climate change, and they're like, I mean, the science says humans are causing this. If you deny this, then you're a science denier. And there's actual scientists in Europe and in the
Well,
US that are called science deniers, and there are scientists with data saying
well,
the oceans are heating up because of increased volcanic activity. Our sun is starting to go into a dormant period. We may be seeing an ice age pretty soon. There's scientists and contemporary science saying this, and these activists are saying, that's all science denial.
people also need to realize is that the Earth has had shifts in climates for like throughout the history of life on the planet. Like take for example the Permian extinction. One of the theories behind the Permian extinction was that the Earth basically heated up into a massive desert, which killed off basically like 90% of life on Earth. And then you basically have several ice ages where the Earth has basically heated up and then cooled down due to like changes in like either I think it's either the polarization of the Earth or maybe it's the moon axis. But there have been instances where the Earth has basically had several ice ages before. So this isn't really anything new when it comes to the Earth heating up or cooling down. It's just the real question is have we sped it up? That's like literally the only thing that there is are we speeding up the process? Because this process has happened before plenty of times.
Well, I don't think that we have enough evidence to actually. decide either way. Like our current efforts to reduce pollution, like we have been doing, like that we have been making innovations,
Well,
with
my biggest problem.
our filtering systems, not just with our cars, but with our coal burning power plants, with our oil systems, you know like for some reason we're not using nuclear as much as we should, but we have more
Well, that's
material, and we have more material to make, to basically have enough energy for everybody, that is a
well, we're
clean
not.
source of energy.
Well, the reason why we're also not using nuclear is because nuclear is a dangerous substance. I mean, it's green technically. It's just human wise, it's deadly to us and stuff. But like my personally, my one of my problems with the climate change advocates is that their solutions involve basically like hindering, like potentially ruining the economy and basically implementing more stricter and bigger government. That's my biggest problem. Is that the climate change people are very much pro big government.
Well, yeah, it's that most activists are, like,
Yeah,
activist organizations are purely big government, for big government. They
in my opinion,
support
that's
a
when
big
people's
government.
freedoms get taken.
Yes, yes, most definitely. I mean, at both extremes, when the government is too totalitarian, you know, um, we end up with little rights or no rights, and when there is too little government, we also end up with no rights, or
Well, let me put it this way. See, how I view it is like when it comes to at least the modern day government. Some people say the government's always done this, but especially when it comes to the modern day government, when the government passes a rule or regulation, there's almost always some form of loophole put into there that can be exploited or abused. Where whether or not it's over like authoritative enforcement, where it's like, oh, this loophole means I can do this to you and stuff, and you voted on it, so you didn't notice it and stuff, or it's basically like, oh, this specific group of people aren't affected by it, but you get it. It's kind of like how it's like how Title IX was supposed to be used to fight against discrimination in school, but now it's basically being used to basically fund false rape accusation.
I have a better one: the Violence Against Women Act.
Okay, yeah.
It is very much a legislation that completely ignores the full problem of domestic violence.
Well, yeah.
It completely ignores things like human nature. Like, women can be just as violent as men, and sometimes they're violent in different ways, more emotional ways, which is just as harmful as physical violence in a lot of ways. Like, if if the person that you're trying to live your life with, have a family with, breaks you down mentally on a daily basis, that's no different than a man doing the same thing to a woman. Just because the man is stronger doesn't mean emotionally, they are stronger. Basically the way that girls socialize themselves, they're a lot stronger emotionally than they claim to be, because if you've ever actually been able to observe a group of women without them, if they think that, like a group of married women, you'll be able to see this a lot easier, because they don't really give a shit what man is in the room, because to them all the men in the room are trained. um they will attack each other in ways that men never will, and they won't attack each other physically. Sometimes they do, but it's always mentally. It's always these little things, and they could be good friends, but sometimes it's just like, why would you do that to your friend, type of thing. And I don't think a lot of women actually realize that
Well,
happens.
women. The reality is, well, women are very manipulative and stuff. But that's just reality. And what people seem to realize is that women are more likely to use objects when it comes to abuse against men. Like, take for example, like men are physically stronger than women, but that physical difference doesn't really mean anything if, say, said woman pulls a knife on you or whacks you over the head with a frying pan, because the human body is not meant to get stabbed or whacked in the head with a piece of metal and stuff.
Right. And even,
Yeah, women use weapons more than men. That's a common fact. Yeah.
yeah, well, weapons, poison. But there's a lot of things. that are within our legal system. Like our legal system, as much as I wish it was egalitarian, it isn't. The law is not equal.
Well, no, no.
It favors women over men, and we see this with the APA. And like Tucker Carlson actually did this great thing with Christina Hoff Sommers on his show where they were talking about the APA, basically saying traditional masculinity is bad and evil. That this is the problem with all men, and this is the problem with men. This is the problem with society. Traditional masculinity. It's very much like the atheist talking point. This is what's wrong with society. Religious, traditionalism. Like all these activist organizations are against the traditional way of life, including the men's rights crowd, which you'd think that they wouldn't be, but they very much are. They all say traditionalism in religion harms whoever they're
Well,
trying to protect, whoever they claim to be
the thing
speaking
about
for.
the thing about men's rights is you gotta realize men's rights are basically egalitarians, and the thing about egalitarians is egalitarians are against traditionalism. Like egalitarianism sounds good on paper, but it's flawed in its reasoning because it doesn't recognize the realities and scientific facts about men and women as well as human beings as a whole.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
genetic
but
differences, yeah.
also when people talk, when people say I'm an egalitarian, I think they're more thinking about legal egalitarianism, not social egalitarianism. Which there's a difference between the two things, because
It depends on the person.
the men's rights movement is very much a social movement. They don't really care.
Yeah.
Like the Canadian, Europe, like everywhere but the United States, because our men's rights activists, our men's rights groups actually don't talk to the public.
Well,
They're
no, because you get doxxed. Like there's so much hatred against men's
well,
rights in
no, I
America.
mean like the actual men's rights activists, the actual fathers' rights people that are actually doing things to impact the law, do not talk to anybody because they're focused on working within their organizations um, to help with the law. It's like that. Nobody actually covers them, which is good because it's kind of good for that. But the whole American men's rights crowd, not the actual people that we know or can identify, not the actual people that talk about these issues, but the actual people doing something about it is what I'm talking about. The men's rights activists, like on YouTube, those aren't men's rights activists. They're just talking about issues. They're not even, talking about possible solutions. And the ones that are, spinning a victimhood narrative, saying that, the problem is men can't feel shame. It's very, very feminist like, very
Well,
cultural Marxist
yeah,
type
I
of
mean,
thing.
well, again, I just feel like people like I think a lot of people identify as egalitarian and it's just from my experiences are people who believe in social egalitarianism, as in it's basically like they're very similar, just some are more radical than others because they're allowed to be. Like feminists are part of the establishment, so they can do that, whereas men's rights activists they can't be really radical, otherwise they're already demonized as a hate group already. Like SPLC tried to label a Voice for Men as being like a hate group on their hate watch site.
Well, yeah, and they actually did that.
Yeah, they did that, but I think they took it down now because I don't see it anywhere on their website anymore.
They took it down, but they do often claim that men's rights activists are hateful,
Yeah,
and
I know, but
I don't agree with that. I just think that like all these activist organizations, there's some Christian activist organizations that are not like
well,
this, but
well,
a majority of Christian, not Christian, but a majority of activist organizations are against traditionalism. Push
yeah.
this type of cultural Marxism, and even the kinds of even the people that are trying to become organized activist groups, like the men's rights activists who are being gatekept at the moment by the people controlling all of activism, which is feminism. Um, which I think that the activist organizations in general are unconstitutional and need to be abolished. I think that they hold no actual purpose in this day and age, where our public sphere um, is everybody within the country can basically talk with one another in real time, anywhere in the country,
Well, if you
anywhere where they are.
if you're gonna get rid of activist organizations, you also have to do something about NGOs because nonprofits are where a lot of these activist organizations gets their money from.
A lot of those so-called nonprofits are activist organizations, even though they're not supposed to be.
Well,
Um,
yeah, but
Freedom
yeah,
Freedom from Religion
it's
Foundation
yeah.
is an NGO that is an activist organization, even though they're not supposed to be. Atheist active American Atheists are a education nonprofit NGO essentially that is not supposed to be political, yet they are. Um,
But yeah, they fund
they're
a lot of money though. They give money, like Antifa gets their money from these people as well.
right, and like you do, NGOs are a problem. We see that they're a problem as we look at what's going on with Europe. These special interest groups, and I include
Yeah, because isn't isn't
I
George
include
Soros's group an NGO? Yeah,
yeah.
like George Soros has an NGO, right?
Well, I kind of include NGOs as part of the activist organizations when I say
Okay, because yeah,
organization.
George Soros definitely. I think
Um,
yeah, his thing is an NGO as well or a nonprofit, and
yeah,
they're definitely giving money and influencing like activist groups in political elections. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, very, very much so. All these groups that are doing these things are political. And I do not agree with the line the personal is political. I actually, disagree with that vehemently. Yeah, some of my personal beliefs do impact my political beliefs, but not everything is political. Not,
Yeah.
politics aren't, the centerpiece of my life.
See,
That's not centerpiece of my thinking.
See,
You
for
know,
my personal opinion at the moment is if nonprofits and NGOs are allowed to basically give money to political and activist groups and stuff, then I feel like churches have every right to also do the same thing. Because I feel like basically like NGOs and nonprofits have more influence over laws being passed and these like groups basically getting money to act out this way compared to like a church basically doing what
right?
they do.
And it's not the religions actually, that are actually abusing the system. It's the non-religious groups. It's that are using a system like the 503c nonprofit system, which was originally created for churches. Like in Canada, for example, if you're a nonprofit, you cannot be in any way political. It is completely against the law. That's not actually the same. Like we have the Johnson Act and stuff like that, but there's laws and regulations that are keeping these more secular groups that use this nonprofit tax shelter type of thing. Um, you know,
Yeah,
that use these organizations to be
but
political, but basically using the same system of the religions,
yeah,
and
but
technically they have to follow the same rules as 503Cs.
yes, but unfortunately in Canada they have Justin Trudeau as prime minister, so they're already down
No,
like deep down the road
yeah,
step.
yeah, but I'm trying to show an example of the difference. Um,
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, yeah, like because wait, in America we do or we don't allow nonprofits to get involved in politics.
like that's it's such a weird issue though that shouldn't be. It should be straightforward. No nonprofit, nobody who is under 503c should be able to be political in any way. That's what the Johnson Act said.
And
And
that
the
would
John
include would
the
that
John
also include donating money? Because they could probably find a loophole saying that they're donating money or something like that.
No, when you're the 503c, you're tax exempt.
Yeah.
Any donations that you get to the person that donated to you is a tax write off. Um, and these organizations, right? They claim, oh, we're secular humanist organizations, but when you really look at what they do, they don't really do it anything what they don't do anything close to what they claim that they're doing. Like, FFRF and American Atheists claim that they're education, but the American Atheists, haven't actually distributed educational materials in 3 years. Not since David Silverman actually, first came into power.
Yeah, but under the rule, they can't donate money to a political organization.
They cannot donate money to a political organization, nor can they actually openly endorse any particular political party or political candidate. Churches as well cannot legally actually endorse any one particular, like a rabbi in a synagogue can't say vote Democrat, but he can say, or she can say, vote vote on November. It's like there's a fine line between politicking and 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 just being civically minded when there's a lot of things as far as having a ministry, legal issues that people just don't understand. It's a big reason why denominational bodies actually exist within Protestantism, because it makes it a little bit easier. But it's like actually starting a non-denominational church is extremely hard to do for one thing. It's not easy. Not only do you have to buy the land, which has to be a certain type of zone, because it is a church. It is technically a public space. In some counties and cities, it's infinitely variable due to how many cities that we actually have in the state, or not just the state, but within the country. Like the East Coast will say something different than the West Coast, because you have city, state, county laws as well as federal laws impacting all of that. So it's a big mess. But basically, you have to set up the church and start going first. And during the time when you're actually applying for 503c status, you are taxed. You are taxed as a church until you get your 503c status. Some churches actually go for the not-for-profit, because that's a little bit easier. They go for the not-for-profit, and then they go to the 503c. But for the most part, it's like actually starting a ministry is hard, and it takes a lot of work if you have no actual support, no actual organizational support. That's why I'm kind of like, I kind of respect non-denominational Protestant Christian churches, but because of all the hoops that they have to actually go through to actually be like the extra steps that they have to go through to actually be considered a church by the government. Because the whole 503 creating ministry, you have to actually prove to the government you are a church. Scientology, when they only recently became a religion, and it took decades of them fighting for it to actually be considered a religion. It's not an easy process. But it still happens. And atheist groups, like there are atheist churches, gathering places that are under this 503c tax exemption that I believe should have the same type of rules that religions do, because of the nature of what they're doing. It's a public gathering place that is that's talking about a spiritual or religious issue. And atheism is very much an answer to a religious question, which is there a God? The theistic answer and deistic answer is yes. The atheist answer is
Yeah,
no.
and the
The
agnostic answer.
the agnostic answer, which is the should be the default answer. This is the default position as far as the government is concerned, in my opinion, is I don't know. Um, or I'm not going to actually, um, you know, say in the affirmative that I support one or the other. It's basically the same as agnosticism. Um, and these activist organizations are trying to change that. These atheist activist organizations are trying to say agnosticism is about what you know, atheism is about what you believe. And if you have known, atheism, to say atheism is the denial of a god or the no to the god question, that's just monotheistic oppression. That's actually on the American Atheist website. um and in pretty much those words, monotheistic oppression is why atheism is considered disbelief, even though philosophically speaking, um, atheism has always meant disbelief up until the 20th century with Anthony Flou's presumption of atheism essay, which started this huge snowball that ended up in new atheism. Now Atheism Plus is in control of atheist activism.
Yeah.
So I mean it's there's a discussion here um about whether or not non-theistic religions like humanism, secularism, atheism, feminism, should be considered under articles of church and state, even though they're not churches. um they should still be restricted to that. Like, Congress cannot side with any of them. They can't side with Christians, they can't side with Muslims, can't side with Jews, can't side with atheists, can't side with feminists. I really think that the separation of church and state, like the actual spirit of
Well,
the concept, is that all these ideologies are separate, and we try to find a way that everybody
you see,
will agree to. But
my
some of these ideologies won't agree to these things.
my personal opinion is that I feel like, okay, so I get why people's I feel like when people reason the separation of church and state and stuff, I just get this feeling like, given that people are allowed to have, are allowed to enact, or sorry, are theoretically allowed to basically form political groups based upon like identity. Like, say you have political groups that are based upon LGBT identity, racial identity, like, like black nationalism, white nationalism and stuff. If you're allowed to have identity based politics, then I personally don't see the reason why religious based politics should be banned, because a lot of these identitarians are supporting laws that basically call for open discrimination against certain groups already.
Including certain races, certain sexualities, and
Well,
certain
yeah, I mean, and this is like all these different groups I mentioned. Like, you have white nationalists that advocate for these things, black nationalists that advocate for these things, LGBT groups that advocate for it, feminist groups. There's all these different types of groups that will advocate for basically people being discriminated against. So it's like, if these things are allowed to be part of politics, then why can't religion?
well, yeah. I mean, I get that with the whole. It's. I don't think it. I think it's the actual organization. Like the actual. This is the thing, though. It's not religious people that can't actually influence these things. Like, you could technically write a law that Jews, Christians, and Muslims would all agree on, based on some distilled concept that is found within all the religions. Make a law on it, and those three groups would be happy as a clam, and it'd be like, okay, I completely support this. It doesn't matter what it is. Like speculate all you want, make the worst thing in your head. It doesn't really matter. um you know but because that law you know um doesn't actually favor any one religion, it's okay under separation of church and state. It doesn't mean that church and state, like, religious ideas need to be separate from government and from the laws. No, it's more, the organizations, you know, the Catholic Church, for example, shouldn't be able to put bishops into office. Like you shouldn't have ordained clergy, um, being representatives in Congress.
Well, yeah, no, but
That's just a bad
I mean,
idea. You
I
know,
know, but
a
religions should still be allowed to say fund. Like if religious groups and like churches and stuff want to fund politicians and stuff, and if politicians openly say that, hey, religion plays a huge role in how I view politics and things, they should be allowed to, since you have other groups that are allowed to do that who are identitarians.
Right, but that's not Congress actually siding with any one religion. That's a elected representative being like, this is me, this is a big part of my
Or
life.
let's just say
This
I'm
is
I'm here to help basically Catholics. Like, let's say, like, I'm a politician, and I say, oh, my pitch to the people is I'm a Catholic and I'm here for Catholic interests and stuff.
right. Well, Jews do that. There are Jewish politicians because I live in an area where that
Yeah,
has,
it gets
has
weird because of the whole
the
ethnic
most
Jew.
well, yeah, but I live in an area that has the most concentration of Jews in America. Um, and which is the East Coast. It's the northeast part of the country. It's weird, but it's such a small group of people, but in this area, you wouldn't know it. Um, but it's there are politicians who are holding office that go to services every Friday, the and actually talk politics with you know um, to kind of get a better idea of it, and to get a better idea of what people think and stuff like that. Like that's his own personal thing. And then then he'll go on a Sunday, the same Jewish politician will go to a Christian church, go through Christian service, and still talk to everybody, even though he's Jewish, and he kind of takes part of everything but the Eucharist. um and talks to the people. He still represents those Christians, even though he's Jewish. And he still talks to these people. And this is just city and county politicians. These aren't like state politicians, although some of the Delaware state politicians do this.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, just
for being a
like
supremely lefty state, the politicians still
oh
are go to churches.
yeah, oh yeah, so oh yeah, I just noticed that it's getting a little late here, so I need to
Uh,
wrap it up. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we've been going on for a little bit. I'm not using OBS tonight because well, I'll explain it to you off air, but um, and I really wish I could have, but I'm doing some exploration with that. Do you have any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, my final thoughts is I personally just feel like with how the country is going at the moment stuff, I basically would not mind like more restrictions on when it comes to voting rights, because I feel like as it is right now, we have a huge number of people who are voting based upon like are who are voting basically for really self-destructive, politicians who have very unrealistic and just mind-bogglingly terrible ideas that they want to legislate into like federal government.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's something that all the listeners should actually chew on a little bit. Um, you know, um, please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. Uh, Definitely hit that bell. And it's we're on a new area, so the algorithm shouldn't be unsubscribing you or anything like that just yet. Um, give it time with Google. They are a very biased company, and we have seen that. But for now, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Tell your friends and enemies. Be sure to go to www.redpillreligion.com. You can see that is the one of the only ways to guarantee that you can actually see when we post our content, it's usually a day after because the person who runs that is in Europe. But definitely go to our website. We also have essays and different things written by different people on our Discord, which is also in the description box. We have you can join our Discord where we have a lot of different types of discussions within there is a lot of things going on, and what was I talking about? Oh, we have a lot of things going on our Discord. You have multiple different types of conversation with multiple different types of people. Myself, Max, that's the best way to actually talk to us. If you want to talk one on one, you can also talk to everybody else that may or may not actually be viewers. I would say that they're all viewers. That's just but there's also, let's be real. We do have like different types of rules and stuff. Like if you actually become a patron, which you can find those on www.redpillreligion.com, you'll get a special role for that. You just have to inform Max of that, and we'll get you squared away. And oh yeah, check us out on gab.com at Red Pill Religion. Mine's at Red Pill Religion, and on Facebook, our group is Red Pill Religion. And tell your friends and enemies about us if you enjoyed it. And God bless everybody.